Phil and Diane and her team some quick housekeeping first. Today's session will be recorded. If you have any audio or video problems, or if you want to rewatch today's session, all recordings and registrations are available on rlpnetwork.com under the training tab. During the webinar, if you have a question for Phil or Diane, please use the Q&A feature. The Q&A icon is at the bottom of your desktop screen or in the three-dot menu at the bottom right of your mobile device. Please note, Q&A is the only source we take questions from. Next to the Q&A icon, you will see the chat icon. Please use the chat feature to share any comments or observations with your colleagues. Ensure your chat feature is set to all attendees, and we will all see what you have to share. So let's try that now. Use the chat and share with our guests today where you are joining us from in this great, big, beautiful country of ours. Come on, chatters. Okay, we got a Toronto, Barrie, some more Ontario, Montreal, yay, Quebec, Ottawa. Let's get some West Coasters in here. Calgary, wonderful. Coquitlam, BC, Collingwood. I think that's where Lori Moore has her second home on the island in Vancouver. Wonderful. That's great. Oakville, another beautiful luxury market. So welcome everybody. Wonderful to have you here. Thank you for attending today. It is my pleasure to introduce our guests from the Institute for Luxury Home Marketing. The Institute is a longtime partner to Royal Lepage and our luxury carriage trade property marketing brand. The Dallas-based Institute delivers our industry's gold standard training and certification in luxury real estate. The Certified Luxury Home Marketing Specialist, yes, it's a mouthful, offered through Royal Lepage at a 15% discount, together with an extended 2-year membership in the Institute, which delivers access to a wealth of luxury property marketing resources, market intelligence, strategic partnerships, and networking opportunities to expand your luxury footprint. Diane Hartely is president of the Institute, and she draws on her more than 20 years of experience growing and leading businesses, as well as her passion for luxury marketing to enhance the Institute's membership experience. Joining Diane today is Institute instructor Tami Sims, who you may be familiar with if you have participated in our past webinars with the Institute, or if you have taken an in-person certified luxury home marketing specialist training. Tami is herself a $1 Million Guild member of the Institute, and she leverages her years of experience selling luxury real estate in the Tampa, St. Petersburg area to bring unique insights in reaching and serving affluent clientele. And to ensure we have all the latest marketing data insights, also joining us is Whistler, British Columbia-based Deborah Worth, who is instrumental in developing the content and in-depth research of the Institute's monthly luxury market report. This is truly a North American team that serves an expansive membership across the globe. Welcome to you all as we get started discussing luxury trends and opportunities in the face of COVID. Phil, the floor is now yours. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Great introduction and welcome. Welcome to Royal Lepage. I know none of you are strangers to Royal Lepage. You've been working with us for a long, long time. Let me ask right off this start, Diane, how's the Institute been working in these strange times?
And I'm on mute.
Oh, there we go. Now you're good.
I caught Tami's face. Thanks, Phil, and thank you for inviting us to join you. This is going to be a really fun-packed hour here. I get the question often, how's the Institute doing? And my answer is we've been extremely busy. As you can imagine, this is a time when agents have taken an opportunity to really advance their careers. I put a blog together last week where we welcomed our 2,000 new members this year. So a lot of folks have really taken us up on our course and renewed their membership and stayed really active. It is an interesting time, but really for us, a lot of it is business as usual. The pivot that we did was we were a live event company, and we shifted to this idea of live streaming. And so luxury live stream has taken off and has been absolutely fabulous. Tammy, how many have you done? 4?
I
think it's
I
5.
I think a few more than that even.
Yeah. So I lose track.
Yeah, it's been an interesting shift for sure, delivering the material and interacting with people in a virtual workspace as opposed to in a live classroom environment.
The and it doesn't surprise me. I mean, you're so geographically dispersed. You're covering basically the continent here on the call today. So great to have you all. You've relied on technology, obviously, to drive your business for some time. I'm going to back up, Diane, and ask you, how did you get into, first of all, real estate, and why luxury? What was it that took you into that particular segment of the market?
So me personally, I actually had the honor of, when Lori Moore retired in 2015, the Institute had just undergone a change. Lori really wanted to exit the business. And as you know, that can be a challenge. And she did a very successful exit. And the company that owns the Institute very much wanted someone with a background in managing a business, because first and foremost, we're a business. We serve tens of thousands of customers, which are our members. And we serve the brand partnerships that we have, as well as our partnerships that we do to make the Institute more powerful. So it really is, my background is business. I I've managed multiple P&Ls, and I got involved in luxury very early in the 2000s. I worked for a major metropolitan newspaper, and it was at a time and when major metropolitan newspapers were going through a shift. And we launched a very, very successful luxury magazine that was geared towards the Dallas, Fort Worth, and extended communities, which it wouldn't be surprising to see that we went into other states and things like that. So it was at that time in the early 2000s that I really developed an understanding for the luxury market. And then I spent a number of years working with a professional services firm serving high net worth individuals.
Okay.
So you have two kinds of things here, right? Luxury advertising and retail, and then who actually buys that and what are they like as folks?
What are the drivers of their behaviors?
Right.
Wants, needs.
Yeah. Yes. And so we're blessed that our actual instructors, right? I don't do the instructing. Our instructors are the luxury real estate professionals.
Perfect. Well, that's a good segue. Now we'll loop back to you very quickly to get an overview of the Institute for those online. One thing I'll say to folks that tuned in, I know a great number of you are focused on the luxury space, but others are just curious. You don't particularly focus on luxury, but you're curious about the space. I mean, who doesn't love beautiful homes and the price that goes along with them and the fees that we charge to sell those big, beautiful homes? Obviously more expensive to market, but the benefits are there once we're successful. But I want to just step back and say the luxury market is part of the cycle of real estate in our communities. We need first-time home buyers to buy those entry-level homes that allows those entry-level homeowners to move up in the mid-market, and the mid-market to move into luxury. I'm simplifying things because obviously luxury involves retired condominium owners, great estates, recreational property, and all that in. But in terms of the cycle of our real estate economy, luxury is a very important part of that. So when the economy, real estate economy is working, luxury is selling. And that's what we're seeing here in the second quarter of 2020, a full life cycle of real estate, including luxury roaring back in. Now, Tami, you have taught a lot of Lepagers over the years. Did you ever spend any time in the field yourself, or are you an adult educator as a career?
I am a full-time residential real estate professional. So I
Oh,
am
okay.
18 years in, and I have the pleasure to work with my mother, who has 35 years in the business. And I have a brother who also joined us about a dozen years ago. So I am on the ground. I am living it every day, the whole cycle that you described, especially as I've had the benefit of my mother's pipeline from the start of her career, which positioned us into a space that was a slightly higher price point than perhaps the average of my peers. And we are now seeing that cycle complete as they are downsizing, and so then the pipeline fills again. So the simplified version of what you expressed is actually very much what I am doing every day.
Well, that's cool. And you're in Florida. I'm
I am.
friends with Michael Saunders and the
Mhm.
Pops, the Kaiser Real Estate Company. Some beautiful luxury homes get traded in your gorgeous state every year.
It's true. It's true. We are fortunate. We have some lovely properties and also a good middle market as well. So Michael Saunders, as you mentioned, is just a little bit south of me in the Sarasota market, in St. Petersburg, which many Canadians are familiar with the St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay area as a vacation destination. We have a good range of products, but a very, very healthy luxury market, especially at this particular moment.
Excellent, excellent. And Deborah, looping to you, are you a Canadian citizen? Are you have you been here for long? I noticed your British accent, but you're living in British Columbia.
Yes, 22 years I've lived in Whistler.
Oh, there you go. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world.
Yes, and my husband's Canadian and the kids are Canadian. So yeah, I'm Canadian.
Well, and thank you for being online. Whistler has been, and the whole Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton corridor, which we know so well, has had some incredible highs and some challenges. I remember back at the 2010 Winter Olympics, they stopped development. What, about 2 years ahead of the Olympics, and it just dried up the market. How do you deal with the ups and downs of the luxury market?
Well, the one thing about Whistler is I would say for the most part, because probably a good 80% of our market is second homes, it is luxury. So there's always a segment within any market which is going to turn over. So if you're a realtor, you're smart, you look to where that turnover is, and then you position yourself there. But yes, we did have a few fallow years between 2010 and probably 2016. So yeah, we kind of followed in a funny way the Americans in the fact that we were affected. And I think a lot of that was because initially we had a lot of American homeowners who then sold. But as Vancouver developed, they replaced the Americans. So then the market just went in, I think 2016, it took off again. So, you know, everything's cyclical. You just have to be really focused on what you can work on.
That's excellent. Well, thank you all for your backgrounds. Why don't we dive in, Diane, into a little bit of an overview of the Institute for our viewers today. And perhaps you could give us some insight into the way you've worked with Lepage, or as we say in many parts of the country, Lepage, over the years.
Sure. Thanks. So the Institute is primarily a membership organization. Okay. So when folks come into the membership, they're trained and they go through either training online or live stream or live when we ever get back to live. But we've got a large number of folks from Lepage who have, it just doesn't sound right from Chicago. But
well, you can, more people say Lepage.
Okay.
But I just always like to
so
give a nod to our Ottawans, Quebecers,
yes.
New Brunswick folks.
Good. Midwestern. That's anyway. So the Institute really does exist to help real estate professionals get to the next level wherever they come to us, right? We meet them where they are. So the beginning of this discussion was around luxury, and luxury is one of those terms that we throw around, and it doesn't have a great definition with it. And so it's about 3 years ago now, Deborah, we sat down together and said, we need to define luxury, right? Because I, as the president of the Institute, would get these sweeping judgments from people about how the luxury market was doing. And there was no index for it. And so we have these members that we serve. And one of the things that we teach is to present people with data, because most people that work, that exist in even the middle market and above, they want data. They want to understand the what's happening in this home they own. So Deborah and I and her team got together and we created a luxury market report that is updated every single month. And we did that really because I wanted something to define luxury. And so luxury is the top 10% of any market. And that looks very different from where Deborah is sitting to where I'm sitting in Dallas, Texas, or Tami in St. Petersburg, or you, I think you're in Toronto. I don't know exactly where you are right now, Phil. Where are you?
I'm in Toronto, yeah.
Okay, so I made a leap. So the reason why we did this was because people think when we say luxury, they think coastal, water, mountains, all of that. And that's not really what luxury is. You defined it perfectly. It's really just a buy-up market. And we have real estate agents who come to us because they want to go to the next level. They want to get into another realm of selling. And really the Institute is a great and really the only place to go and do that, to go and learn how to break through into this market. So that's really how we define it. I never want it to be what I would consider exclusive. We want to be inclusive in
Right.
trying to get folks to that next level.
Excellent. Now, we've talked about this before. Consumers are the driving force behind everything we do. The person who is the buyer of luxury property, expensive property, or the seller who's looking for an advisor to guide them through the process, they do demand certain things of their advisor, don't they? And I think that's at the center of our mission here on the call today, is to give people a little bit of insight into what might differentiate someone who specializes in selling properties to, expensive properties, very valuable properties, from, say, the mass market.
Right.
Maybe we could dive into that a little bit.
You bet. And Tami's going to be fabulous at talking about that. And the one thing I will say is we live in interesting times. And in some markets, the seller looks very different than the person coming in to buy. The seller may not be a quote unquote luxury person.
Someone who's ridden the market up. Yeah, that's a very interesting point.
It's a really interesting, and that's really what we talk about. An agent will work a neighborhood, okay, or farm an area that's gentrifying. And so how do you attract not just the person to call you to sell, but also the buyers? And so Tami, I do think this is really the place that we do outstanding work, is this level of service. So can you talk about that?
And yes, absolutely. And it is an expectation of a level of service that is far more than putting a sign in the yard or facilitating a showing. There's an expectation from the consumer at this level that their real estate professional knows more, anticipates their needs, manages more of the transaction so that they can focus on what it is that they do. They're looking for their real estate professional to know completely the ins and outs of how everything is going to work, anticipating next steps. Just what I did this morning, Monday morning, is check in with my clients in transactions that are in progress to set expectations for the week and to make sure that they know that I am completely available for them for whatever they need. there's a sophistication that isn't about snobbishness. It's about expectation of knowledge and true concierge service. I know concierge service gets used, overused in many cases. One of Mike's favorite webinars that I did for you all was actually the concierge level services. So that would be a good one to revisit. But it's that higher expectation that comes into play.
So if we were, Tami, if we were to look at this in, I don't know, parallels in other industries, or just in terms of the financial reality of acting as an advisor in the brokerage of a large value asset, your fee is going to be higher. The price obviously of the property is higher, so the fee is higher. Your expectation of what you are going to spend in supporting and marketing that property is higher. So to a certain degree, you've got to up your game and think of different ways you can add value to justify your brokerage fee. That would be fair, would it not?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I would agree. There's a higher investment from the real estate professional, as you alluded to, but it's very important that be leveraged. So rather than thinking about marketing dollars for particular properties, it's part of the larger piece of building your sphere of influence and of marketing yourself with those higher expectations and professional services. So it's a bigger picture. Goes back to the cycle that you mentioned, but the expectations are that we can meet whatever their needs are. So immediately what came to mind is resort concierge. That's where I started out straight out of college with a fine resort with Ritz-Carlton level expectations. And that's the service level. That's also the quality level that they expect. Think about the quality of the marketing needs to match the quality of the property. So everything goes into the equation of really making an excellent impression.
It's true, right? The quality of photography, maybe if we were to look at either ends of the scale, you're selling, you've been hired to represent the sale of a Ritz-Carlton suite in downtown Toronto. It's the condo's $5 million, and the client has very high expectations. The other end of the scale, we being Canada's largest real estate company, cover all the bases in terms of properties, and we will represent landlords, help people who are looking to rent a small condo. Say they just gotten out of college and they're looking for service. Obviously, that representative, that role of pager has to be very efficient. They can't afford to spend a huge amount of time, invest a huge amount, because their time is their money on that property if they're going to make $2,000 or $3,000 versus say a $75,000 fee on marketing a very large asset. So how do you start to define what the needs are? Where do you even begin to understand what the baseline should be?
Well, when you were describing that scenario, it made me think immediately that the $2,000 that you would get helping someone, a young professional, rent their place, if you offer them the same level of service that defines you as a professional, at that point, you will earn their business and their referrals for life. Right. So there's a lot of folks that feel as though they can't help people at different ends of the spectrum. And I'm in a market where I have a wide spectrum, and I firmly believe that it's about the relationships and the long-term goals. So I am all about quality versus quantity, and that guides my mission statement and my activities. And I think that's one of the things that we teach is how to define in your mind, what is it that you want to accomplish and how can you get there? And it's not a silver bullet. It's not a quick fix. It's a much larger concept that takes you to where you want to be professionally and also provides an incredible service to people all along the way.
Yeah, and you know what? You hit on something, and particularly for those who do cover a wide range of property types and property prices. Professionalism is professionalism. If you think of companies that have been very successful, like Amazon, Amazon delivers a high standard of service, whether they're helping you by outsourcing services for a big company like us, and your bill is into the seven figures, or you're purchasing a box of masks or something for $15, you're going to get the same level of response back and forth, and the excellence shows through right across the board. So I get that. The challenge, of course, is if you were to spend, and again, I come back to all my people have is their time. That's it, right? So if they don't manage their time, they won't make a living. They have to be very, very effective and efficient. And that's a lot of what we do, is to try to put productivity tools in their hands that allow them more time with their clients and less time invested. But as the value of the asset, as the value of the home climbs higher and higher, the implication there, the implied delivery is that you're going to spend more time, more hours, more of that precious time of yours to move the property it costs. Maybe I'll move to Deborah for a second. Deborah, the price points in British Columbia are much higher than anywhere else in Canada. It's our most expensive real estate. Call it a benchmark about 50% higher than you see in Ontario, which is our second most expensive market.
Yes.
What do you anticipate? What do you think clients expect when they ask someone, one of our people, to market a multi-million-dollar chalet?
So do you mean, what do they? I'm not actually a realtor.
No, I know, but you are you a trainer?
No, I'm not a trainer. I
Deborah,
do data research.
Yeah, Deborah is
Oh,
our
you're our
researcher.
data person.
Yeah, she's our data person. So,
Don't market homes.
so Phil, if I may, one of the things
Absolutely.
one of the things that the Institute has put together is, we call it our luxury marketing blueprint. Okay, and it is a 7-step process that helps define, there you go, Tammy's got hers right there, but it's a 7-step process of the things that need to occur, right, when you walk out of training in order to do the things we're talking about. But the very first one is, we call it your luxury mindset. And I think that's what you're referring to here. When we look at what completely differentiates a successful agent, such as Tami, right? A real estate professional who works at all levels, but really specializes in the luxury market in her area. What she does is she has access to and uses the technology that makes her more efficient. Okay. There's absolutely room for folks who don't really want to embrace that. But in order to provide the level of service that Tami and our members have to provide, something's got to give, right? And so maybe, Tami, you can talk a little more specifically about what we teach around that.
Yeah, why don't you walk us through the 7 steps, Tami? Oh, and before you do that, for those out there on the call, I know you will have very specific ideas and questions focused on the luxury market, whether that's your specialty or if you're interested in going into it. So please get your minds working and get those questions in, and we'll invite Kelly back in a few minutes to curate and get some of those questions out to our panelists today. Sorry, Tami, over to you.
That's all right. And before I talk about the 7 steps, which is really 2 days worth of material, I wanted to speak to the idea that the expectation is that you will spend more time servicing a very expensive listing. And I think that there is something to be said there for the value of my expertise is my ability to utilize other resources to make the highest and best use of my time. I don't need to be checking on the landscapers. I don't need to be replenishing the flowers. I don't need to be making sure that the flyer box is stocked or that the materials are ready. And so I have to demonstrate that part of my value is that I have a team that allows me to focus on negotiation, market understanding, so that what I'm providing is between my ears, more so than something tangible that someone would say, are you working harder? Are you spending more hours? So it becomes, even in a market like I'm in right now, if a property is well priced, in good condition, in a desirable location, it will go for above asking within 48 hours. And so then you have the tendency for someone to say, well, but you didn't do enough, right? It went so quickly. Shouldn't your fee be less? And that's when you have to be able to support the fact that I was able to do what I did because of my experience and my level of expertise and the resources that I reached out to. And that's what the value is.
Yeah. And our people deal with that all the time. And they know on the other side, if they're representing the buyers, the number of hours they put in representing the buyer in these very hot sellers markets could be extended by 5, even 10 times.
Exactly.
14 offers before they succeed.
Exactly. And that's when we feel as though we should be earning a psychology degree as well. But just to hit on the main
7
points
steps
of the blueprint, which is a really condensed thing where Diane already mentioned that starting with your luxury mindset, building your luxury brand is a key component of that. Really working on building your sphere of influence and focusing on your marketing consultation, how you manage what you might be referring to as the listing appointment, which we refer to as a marketing consultation, which reaffirms the fact that we're providing professional marketing services or professional services in that respect. Building your negotiation skills, really, really crucial, regardless of which side you're on. And then luxury marketing, right? So if you're successfully acquiring high-end listings, you need to be well versed on the techniques and the tools that are available for you to market them appropriately. And then implementation. Continued implementation. And so it sounds like kind of a nutshell version, but there's a lot of work to be done. And some of us need a little more attention in one space. Some of us, as Diane mentioned, everyone comes to us at different stages. Some folks have a lot of these things in play, and they need to leverage the resources, the tools, the relationships, that sort of thing. And others are starting on a path that is going to take them from the entry level to the next step. So we've really tried to design things in a way that, from an implementation standpoint, we're providing the tools for all of our members to be able to implement those things that are the next steps for where they need to go.
Well, that's very interesting, very interesting. Looping back to you, Diane, was there anything else you'd like to cover before we turn to our audience and see what's on their minds?
So I think that there's 2 things. The first one is when I talk about meeting a real estate agent where they are, and for the Institute and training. I think one of the most interesting things that's happened in the last 5 years or so ago, it now is used to be that luxury real estate was kind of mystical and people were a little afraid of it. And I'm always shocked when folks come to me and say, you know what, I just got my license. I live in this type of an area. I know I need to be here. And even though I'm new, I'm not going to get involved in all of the, the head games around how hard it is. I want to learn how to do it. And I think a lot of that is at least on US television, it's kind of cool. People think it's really neat. Then they do it and they realize it's actually pretty hard. But there is not this perceived any longer real gap with folks coming into real estate. And I think that's great. And secondly, the other thing I wanted to point out before we opened up for questions was we did a little bit of kind of macro and micro research on the Canadian market and what we're seeing. And so I do want to talk a bit about this thing I call the luxury market report. And our members who are listening understand this. It's been in place for about 3 years. We track 90 North American markets. And so when the question comes up is what's happening in Toronto or Vancouver, we have those answers, and it's a month to month. So Deborah has pulled some data for this conversation. I don't want it to be data heavy, but I do think I'd like her to kind of comment on, you've got the first 3 months of COVID and what occurred, and then now what's happened in the last 30 days or so, and how folks have really, how the market's opened back up again. So what Deborah's showing here is the sample luxury market report, and it shows all of North America. We don't track Mexico right now. We just track the US and Canada, but it's the North American report is available to everyone. Right? We get folks from every walk of life, from private wealth advisors to, frankly, reporters who are pulling our data in the North American report. That behaves as the index of the 90 markets that says what's happening as a whole in luxury. And then we do the drill down. And Deborah, if you'd like me to share my screen, and we can kind of talk for a minute or two about what's happening in, say, Toronto, or you could just use this. I mean, I think this is great. Or would you like me to share my screen, Deborah?
Deborah had it up actually. So, oh, you're muted, Deborah.
So those are reports, but the data I put on the slides is more relevant because
super.
We're right in the middle of just finishing pulling all the stats for June. So I've got them, but they're not actually in report form until.
Ooh. Well, that's good. That's good. So folks are going to get a
sneak peek.
Yes, we're getting a sneak peek.
All right. So here's really what I talked about a little bit earlier, but it's the benchmark is the top 10%. And she's going to talk about inventory, sales, prices, and then this concept of price banding, which the Institute fully believes in. And this is one key critical thing that helps you price a property correctly, and then the sales ratios. So those are the things that, if we could just take Toronto to begin with, if you want to talk about what's happening in Toronto.
Yes, for sure. Price banding again comes back to that whole conversation we had, that sometimes in a market we look at luxury and we put it as one block, but actually within luxury itself there are many ranges, and so that's why price banding is important, because you can actually see which part of the market is turning over. And if you're a luxury agent, that's really important to understand, because you can impart that information to your clients. So we went back and we looked at what was happening, and it's quite interesting how it definitely in Toronto, there's a big change between May and June. We would see in May, and you have to understand that the benchmark is 2.5. So we pull all the data, but then we take the 2.5 million and above for Toronto, which is basically the top 10%. And then the median sold price is about 3.1 at the moment. And then in May, we saw the inventory has dropped compared to last year 60%. So that was quite a significant drop in the number of listings. And it was more so that new listings weren't coming on rather than actually listings being taken off. And I think that's important to understand when you do data analysis. It's not just about the number, what's behind the number, right? Because if we think that the market is down because there's very little inventory, what is affecting it? And I said most of it I could see was that wasn't much inventory coming on at that point. When the word really was getting out that actually real estate's resilient, then we see quite a shift in June. The inventory is, it's only down by 25% compared to last year, but the number of sales is significantly up. I mean, that's a huge jump against last year. 43% up in the number of sales. And I think that speaks to the fact that there obviously was pent-up demand. So it will be very interesting to watch what actually happens in the next few months. And again, we see quite a significant jump of 144% against May's number of sales in May. And then to speak to the price band, this was the 2.7 million to 2.9 million was really where sales were being seen as, so there were 28% of 100 homes, for instance, 28 of them sold. So that's basically what that means. And then we looked at the condo market in Toronto. This is Toronto, this is not GTA, right?
Right.
So again, what I think the biggest difference I'm seeing overall is that single family homes are actually doing way better than condos. I think a lot of the condos are selling in the higher price point because they have space. Ultimately, the biggest factor we're seeing right now is that people are looking for space and privacy, and not being in situations where they don't have to have contact with people unless they need to. So that's Toronto. This is GTA York. Again, number of sales is increasing compared to last month and compared to last year. Then we can go to the next one we do is Oakville. And interestingly, number of sales for Oakville have not really climbed in the same way as Toronto has. And I was doing some research, and I think what's happening in the Oakville market is that the lower part of the sort of the medium price homes are selling really, really well, but luxury itself, maybe there was just maybe there was a lot of sales last year. So comparatively, it feels that it's not doing as well as Toronto is doing now. Because I know that over the last couple of years, there's been a big shift of people moving out of Toronto and moving into these secondary markets. Would you agree with that, Phil?
Yeah, the Oakville didn't have a particularly strong second quarter of 2019. We had the introduction of the federal mortgage stress test, which made it more difficult for people to get mortgage financing. Now, it didn't impact the luxury market directly, but it impacted the cycle of real estate. So we had softer demand from the beginning of 18 to the middle of 19, including in Oakville. My guess is you're right on just the sort of transitionary period here, and it's moving to the same place that we have in other major centers. Everybody's coming out of this in a slightly different fashion. Oakville wasn't quite as hard hit as the GTA itself, and the severity of the lockdown was a little less little less severe, so there was less pent up demand. There was less shut in during the real heart, that first quarter, April shutdown, and we're seeing this burst in activity in other markets like Toronto, and a little less so in our secondary cities.
Yeah, Vancouver and Victoria are, yeah. And it's funny because the Okanagan is the same. It's slower in coming back up. So that's Vancouver. Again, we're seeing some great numbers come June. The inventory levels are still down compared to last year, but the number of sales is dramatically up in the luxury market. So it's really good positive, because Vancouver in particular over the last few years has suffered quite dramatically. So it's nice to see the numbers bounce.
And a lot of that you both think is because the lockdown just wasn't as severe in BC?
Yeah, it was in Vancouver in the beginning, but you're right. The interior, Kelowna, Kamloops, some of the luxury markets there was not as severe. You're right.
So yes, and you know, we're seeing some very interesting things in the U.S. as well. And Tami, you know, has commented on, she was in you were in a good market, but it's suddenly that pent up demand opened up where you've got no time.
Exactly. We had a very strong first quarter, and the market paused for a couple of weeks when we went into lockdown mode, and then came screaming back. But it's one of those things that points to why we might want to work in the upper tier, because there is less impact from financial upheaval that affects people's jobs, their hours, that sort of thing. And so the folks who had stability in either their employment, their finances, their savings, they were still able to make moves. And so what we saw was all the tire kickers went out of the market. And these are all people, especially those who perhaps they'd been thinking about buying or selling prior to the shutdown, and now they've just spent 3 months in the place where they already decided they didn't want to be anymore. And so there's an urgency to it. We're also seeing people shift. Deborah mentioned the condo market performing at a different way than single family. We have a few listings on the market right now of folks with very expensive condos who were stuck, unable to use their amenities, but still paying for it, who've opted to go back to a single family environment. So there are people who are going to be adjusting their long-term plans and their priorities as a result of this. But those folks that have the means are moving.
Right. And I think that's an excellent point, Tami, about means. So there's an area here in the US, in Arizona, called Paradise Valley. I'm sure you're familiar with it, Phil. I've got an Institute member who posted on the Facebook page the other day that she congratulated her team with high fives because through June they did the entire production of 2019. And this is, I think the entry point in Paradise Valley is $1 million, and the average is about $1.8 million. And so it's a little bit of the means, and it's also a want and not a need. And when the want has been pent up, you know, there's action. So I do think we could probably take some questions from folks, Phil, if we've got them.
Sure, Kelly.
Well,
hi again, everybody. Welcome back. You know, it was interesting what you were just talking about there in terms of pent-up demand and, you know, people having the means. And when I read the June luxury market report, I was certainly surprised to see that there were significant increases in spend of luxury items like airplanes, second properties, recreational or estate properties. What do you think is driving that, and what other trends are you seeing coming out of response to COVID?
Well, look, I work with the wealth advisory community, and the U.S. stock market did what we sort of call a V, right? And when that V started to come back, we certainly think people said, you know, can't really use that money sitting in my portfolio. I think I'm going to grab 2 million and go buy a house in Sarasota, or take that money and, you know, buy a share of a jet. And I do, because I think the mentality was this money was pretty safe, and then it wasn't. And so that's one thing that we're seeing, Tammy, in the wealth community. Tam, what are you seeing specifically?
And so we go back to the concept of value. And value is not necessarily dollars. So what Diane just articulated about the value of one's portfolio, well, how valuable would it be when you cannot get on a commercial airline to get to your place where you can do what you will, whether that's in a pandemic response, or whether there becomes a real value to having some control and some space, as we've talked about. And this goes to the idea, I love one of the points that Diane made with us internally this morning, is that there is, there is now the potential for those big properties that had been languishing as people have been drawn to the urban environment. There's a space for that again.
Mm-hmm.
And
an asset class movement, for sure.
Yeah. So value is coming into play much more so than brick and mortar or portfolio dollar value.
There was some questions in the chat about migration patterns. I'll just give you my high level, and then if anyone has anything to comment, you can use a US example if you'd prefer. We do see the flow of people in the country. Economics drives it, demographics or age drives it. So for example, right now, we're seeing about 5,000 baby boomers retire a week. If you use a US equivalent, it would be about 50,000, about 10 to 1. And a lot of those people who are living in our major cities, in family homes, are now saying, you know, this the opportunity cost of staying in this large, expensive family home in a city when my kids are gone and I'm downsizing my work, or I can work more remotely, is less. So they already were trending to smaller communities, not necessarily smaller homes. So our research showed that the majority of baby boomers were not actually downsizing. They were down maintenancing, but they weren't necessarily looking for less square footage. Have you seen any trends like that in terms of the kinds of property and where they're going, where people are moving? And I'm not talking about COVID, because honestly, if you go back to the beginning of the millennium, the beginning of the century, when we had the horrible crisis in New York at 9/11, there were lots of futurists that said, towers are gone, no one will want to live in them again, the airline industry will never be the same. And of course, fixes were put in place. We changed the processes by which we live, and people felt comfortable, and they returned. Economics drove people to, you know, build more high-rise towers, and airplanes and air traffic was never as busy as it's been in the last decade. So I believe once we have medical and scientific solutions in place, many of the trends that we see in terms of migration patterns will halt, except those that were already underway. For, you know, we have the baby boomers. We also have the millennials having their second child and looking for more space, looking for a backyard. Maybe you could comment on some of that if you've noticed any of that in your neck of the woods.
Well, absolutely. And it goes back to that cycle that you initially talked about at the beginning of our time together. And that is a natural cycle. And there is always influence by things that happen around us, but it will always go back to that. I happen to live in a little big town. So St. Petersburg is about 260,000. And in a lot of people's opinion, mine particularly, it's just big enough and just small enough. So it provides everything all in one. We've got an incredible downtown urban core where people are choosing to live in those high rises and paying record-setting prices. We had one that's almost $7 million go under contract last week, and one at 5.1. Those are staggering figures for St. Petersburg, staggering. But we've also got neighborhood, and we've got all of those things. So I tend to get to see all of that in my everyday work. Those folks that are shifting in one place or another, and it is happening, and I think we will go back to that. And those folks who felt too isolated will want the urban environment where they can have things at their fingertips, and those that felt too constricted will shift to an urban, and those folks that are having children and dogs and all of that will continue to feed the pipeline, buy up, change their world, and come out on the other side, and then we'll do it all over again.
But Phil, I think it's an interesting thought, right? I liken this a bit to 9/11, and the behaviors that were created in the short term and how that impacts us in the long term. And I remember the things you're talking about, right? Never going into a high rise, and suddenly you go into New York City and Brooklyn is getting $4 million for a condo, right? But we are certainly seeing, I mean, the flock to the Hamptons is almost unprecedented in Manhattan. And again, these are the wants. These are the people that have a large enough portfolio that they can move around their asset classes. And so in some ways, while it's not necessarily because of this, I think people are making moves like they did with 9/11 that said, wow, wake up call, right?
Yeah. Accelerating trends that may have already have been started, but they get a push.
And we're still in this, and what's very different about anything that we're talking about is this is still ongoing, and we don't know what the end is going to bring us. And so there's some speculation here for sure. And anything that's occurred in the past can inform us, but we don't know. We do see it. We do see the migration occurring.
Yeah. Also on the trending side, we definitely are seeing that people are, so maybe they have a condo downtown and that was their key home, and they've moved to their second home, like the Hamptons, like going out to Lake Tahoe and all these places, or even moving. I was talking with someone the other day in San Francisco, and they're moving out to the peninsula. They didn't want to go there before because it's an hour and a half drive. Now they're happy to swap. So they're at home and they go into the office once a week.
Right.
So we're seeing that trend happening. So it's a bit of a swap, but they're leaving the door open to swap back.
Well,
right?
And you know what? Economics is a great equalizer. We have done studies in the past on the impact of far suburban property prices on higher or lower fuel prices.
Yep.
So the imputed cost of commuting. And sure enough, when fuel prices are very, very high, there's a relative discount in the far suburbs around a major metropolitan area relative to downtown. And the opposite happens, and there's an evening out when fuel prices are very low, like they are now. So now you've got COVID people saying, I need more space, I'm working from home. You've got baby boomers retiring, millennials having children, saying, I need a backyard, or I don't need to be in the city. And cheap gas, and it's all sort of working, but the prices will rise in the secondary cities. The prices will rise in the far suburbs, and it'll make the relative cost of properties in the core of our great cities look like more of a bargain. And the young people will say, gosh, I can live in a cool condo on Lake Ontario for the same price as some, place far afield. Hell yeah, I'm moving, to the place with a view, and things will have a balancing impact, particularly when we're through this health crisis.
Are you seeing any trends specific to age demographics or property features themselves? Obviously, with people working from home, home offices are important, but in the luxury niche, I'm sure those home offices are probably like home office buildings. What are you seeing there? Obviously, connectivity is super important.
What about,
Sort of
what about
features are buyers
gyms?
looking for?
Nobody can go to a gym anymore. I wonder if,
Exactly.
Well,
We are definitely seeing anecdotally there's more demand for flexible room in the space, which goes back to your point, Phil, about they're not necessarily looking to downsize in terms of overall size. They actually may need more space so that they can have their, they can have their home gym.
place
They
for the
can,
Peloton and
right, exactly, and all of those. And what I see in my marketplace, fortunately, we have great weather, right? We felt
Right.
bad for all the people who were stuck inside with really lousy weather. And so outdoor space, and whether that's active outdoor space for a younger demographic, or whether it's a more relaxation oriented outdoor space for an
patio
older.
style, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and the other thing that we kind of speculate on is this idea that's so big in the US, it's open concept, right?
Right.
Try open concept when both of you work, right? You could have a $2 million place
Very
that has,
true.
I have
and,
a kitchen. I get it.
and,
You hit
and
on something, and Kelly will, this will hit home to Kelly. We've seen we're a big commercial brokerage house in Canada as well. And we've seen a big move to open concept offices, including us. So we just completed a major renovation of our headquarters where we all moved to this glorious, pro work sharing, work group sharing, bright, cheery, open space where we can all spread germs on each other.
Yeah.
Right.
When we used to have these little boxes we all lived in, which were not conducive to work group sharing, but they were really good at keeping germs apart.
And that's now the third rail, right? Like this idea of open anything in commercial real estate, the scramble is unreal. And the other thing that I'm kind of speculating on is the idea of really advanced ventilation. So if you think about, when you think about someone who has a massive luxury home, they're doing that in part because they want to share that space.
That's really, really interesting insight. And now we're marketing not just the luxury audio visual features,
right?
But we're marketing ventilation and air quality.
The next level of green, right?
Yeah.
The next
health and wellness industry has just, it was going crazy anyway. It was a trend for the last 3-4 years. Builders were putting all the health and wellness features in, but now it's becoming a necessity in their minds, and they can afford it. So they are switching to private ventilation within condos.
Private ventilation, that's very interesting because we don't have that in office towers, right? We very much shared ventilation.
Yes, and the high-end restaurants, right? All of the things that what I would consider would be lifestyle related. We don't always go to this place just because we can get a nice meal. We go because it just feels really great and all that. And it's around, how do we get to that next level of innovation? And I'm excited about that. I have to be honest, having lived through 9/11 and watching all the changes, and we can sit and speculate about that, but they're really important trends to be aware of when we're asked, because I read an article this morning. It was exactly on that theme. It was, let us not lose this opportunity to advance the human condition, because there's so many ways we could make life on this planet better for so many more at this time. And we need to keep that we can't let a good crisis go to waste. Right. I might use that, Phil. That's good. That's really good.
Hey, it was so great to have you. Kelly, are we okay to wrap up? I know we're keeping people over time, or?
Yeah, we are keeping people over time, but one last plug for the Institute, because I know that there's a lot of interest in the network, absolutely, for what you guys do and what you offer. And we've been longtime cheerleaders of all of that. But on September 9th at 2 o'clock, you folks are going to do another webinar with our learning services team and Alicia, who manages the Carriage Trade luxury brand. So stay tuned for that. And I know you'll be talking more about your specific value proposition and ways that the team can leverage luxury as an opportunity for their real estate.
Yes, and this is how I make a living, so I have to say it, right? That luxuryhomemarketing.com /RLP will take you to the very specific offer that we have for Royal Lepage. And that's not something that's in the market in any way, shape, or form. So take advantage of that.
That's right. I think you only give us the 2-year membership in the Institute.
I'm telling you,
Get 1 year.
it's a great, and so it was a pleasure.
We just skimmed the surface today as necessary, but I really wanted to thank you, Diane, Tami, Deborah, for bringing such interesting and different viewpoints on a part of the real estate market that fascinates everybody. We love luxury things, but nobody loves anything more than luxury homes in terms of really understanding or really drooling over all the magic that occurs there. And we have a lot of people that earn their living by satisfying those great demands. So thank you for this today. And thank you, Kelly, as always, for putting together a very interesting, maintaining momentum session.
Great. Well,
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, everybody.
We appreciate you.
Stay safe. Be well.
Take care,
Take care.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.